Welcome back to the gospel. We have an amazing show for you today. Going to go over a little bit of everything sports. Hope you guys have enjoyed your week. We have finally gotten to Friday, so I am looking very much forward to another weekend full of sports. I am your Jose, the fantasy football fiend. And of course, I have my guy, BK Wins. How about the people, BK?
Hey, y'all.
Make sure you're following us at YouTube. That's at the Gospel STP. On YouTube, again, that's at the Gospel STP. And if you have not joined the Facebook group yet, make sure you do so. We give out a lot of information, keep you up to date with everything that's going on in the wonderful world of sports. That's on Facebook at the Gospel Sports Truth Facebook group. The Gospel Sports Truth Facebook group. Let's go right ahead and hop right into it. What's the good word of the week, BK?
So, how impressive has star quarterback Jaden Daniels been? And what current or former great quarterback does he most remind you
of? Very impressive, especially after that Hail Mary for the only thing that could have made that Hail Mary last Sunday against Chicago better is if it was like in the playoffs or something like that. But he's better than advertised. He's showing that he should have been the number one quarterback off the board, in my humble opinion. The performance that he had last week with bruised ribs, you can't ask more than that. His teammates like him, respect him, more importantly. And I feel like there's two guys that he sort of reminds me of just a little bit. I'll go one that's a little older, but then one that's old school. The one that's a little bit older is actually someone that played for the same team. He's basically a RG3 2.0 prior to the injury. And then old school kind of reminds me of Steve Young. He has the wheels, he has the accuracy, he has the moxie, if you will. So he reminds me quite a bit of Steve Young and RG3. What you got?
Yeah, so he's been sensational. You and I, and even Vander, have talked about how Daniels was by far the best pro prospect coming into the draft, and I'm grateful every day that the Bears screwed up another draft and took Caleb Williams. Glad that they have that problem. But talk about leadership. He doesn't turn the ball over, only 2 interceptions so far this year. He takes care of the ball. He doesn't put his team in a bad position. He can make all the throws. He's athletic. He's doing a better job of protecting himself. And the team loves him. You know, it was very telling earlier in the year that star receiver Terry McLaurin, when the first couple of games he wasn't getting his targets or touchdowns, he said, look, this guy has it. I understand that there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. It's going to work out. It's just we have to go through the process. Oh, how many receivers would have tried to throw their quarterback under the bus or been salty because their numbers weren't good, or they would have gotten grief, or what's wrong with me because my numbers aren't good, and then pointed to the quarterback? He didn't do that. And next week, the following week, he had a huge game. So I love that. As far as current and former quarterbacks, kind of a hodgepodge, a little bit Lamar Jackson with his athleticism. Randall Cunningham, who he really reminds me of. He's got the arm and the athleticism. In playing Tecmo Bowl, I used to always call him Randall Claus because he would run around and I'd run my little offense, and it was a lot of fun. But anyways, and the other guy, really, really old school, but because he has the arm strength and the big arm, Warren Moon.
Okay.
You remember that run and shoot and fun and gun offense that the Oilers had with Duncan and Jeffries and all those guys, right? And Givens. But they could really toss the ball around. So he reminds me of those.
I can definitely see that. Honestly, all the quarterbacks we named have a few attributes that are kind of similar. So yeah, I can definitely see that.
So I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. And you notice I waited till almost halfway in the season to ask. But can or will the defending champion in 7-0 Chiefs finish undefeated?
Can, sure. Will, no. I guess that's the easiest way to put it. Odds and history are against them. Also, there'll be some games that come along a little bit later that Andy Reid, I believe, will kind of make a pimp decision, if you will, that there are a few players that are more important that they're healthy versus them winning a meaningless game when they'll be heads and shoulders above anyone that could attempt to get to where they are as far as wins and loss record will be concerned within the AFC, and as far as the bye week and all that kind of stuff is concerned. So I'll say, could they? Sure. Will they? 99.9% that they won't.
So, of course, they can, right? As long as you remain unbeaten, you can. That part's easy. Will they? History says no. I openly admit it, not because they're your favorite team, but if there was ever a team that I thought would do it, I thought it would be the '07 Patriots, and obviously they were a quarter away of doing it. Um, the the other team that I really thought had a chance was the '98 Broncos that I think started out 13-0. They cruised through the season, and Elway and Terrell Davis. I mean, that team was loaded. Um, so that was another team that I thought had a chance, especially to start out 13-0. But obviously, they didn't get it done. They finished 14-2. They started resting people after I think they lost a road game at the Giants and then a late one where they rested people. But if you look at their schedule, and you know I like playing the schedule game. So here's their schedule. They got Tampa Bay at home coming up next. That should be a win, especially without their top two receivers, and it's a home game. So no Evans, no Godwin. I don't think the Bucs have a chance to beat them in Arrowhead. They have Denver at home. Up until last year, they had owned Denver. It'd been like 7 years in a row they swept the series. So, or 6 years in a row or something like that. They go at Buffalo. They get Carolina on the road, Vegas and the Chargers at home. They go at Cleveland, home to Houston, at Pittsburgh, at Denver. So in my mind, I'm going to run through a few games. I've kind of targeted 3 games that I think might give them trouble, not only because they're road games, but because, to your point, the last 2 games, there might be some rest involved. As I like to call it, self-preservation. I think they'll be 9-0 heading to Buffalo. They'll beat Tampa Bay and Denver at home. At Buffalo is going to be tough. Buffalo isn't the better team, but it's tough to win in Buffalo, and you don't know if it'll be a weather game. So all of those things kind of make it possible. I think they beat Carolina, Vegas, and the Chargers. The Browns could be a little bit, you get a December game in Cleveland. Lord only knows if it snows and what the wind and all that stuff is. Houston at home, I don't think that'll be an issue. But at Pittsburgh and at Denver to close the season, the Steelers are a really, really good team. Being at home again, weather, good team. I think those would be the 3 games that I would target: at Buffalo, at Pittsburgh, at Denver. How do you feel about that? Like, if you were to pick the first loss, where would you look?
When we're looking at a good team, I always look at division rivals, it can be easier to beat a team that rarely sees you, but your division rivals kind of know your strengths and weaknesses a lot better than anyone else. So if they're going to take a loss prior to the playoffs, I feel like it would end up being either Vegas, Denver, or the Chargers. And honestly, the game at Denver, with a combination of it being the last game of the season and them in all likelihood having nothing to gain from the win, we don't know if we're going to see all of their starters. And at Denver is never an easy place to win just in general. I don't know necessarily that they beat Vegas. Vegas always plays them very close. They only won by one score when they played Vegas. Was it last week? I believe it was.
Yep.
But I just don't see them going unscathed. At Pitt won't be an easy win either. So if we're looking at the first L, it could be the Las Vegas game. It could be the Chargers game. Again, division foes tend to, not look at you in awe. They know exactly what they're going to get. So those would be the first two that I would look at heavily. And then from there, looking at the last two games of Pitt and Denver.
Okay.
Now, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, well, actually, if you had another comment to make on that situation, by all means. I was going to actually switch over to the NCAA and ask a couple of questions about that.
Yeah, hit me. What you got?
All right, so we got a few games that are either going to be just entertaining, or if they aren't entertaining, it'll still matter based on ranking sake. You got Ohio State versus Penn State. You got Texas A&M versus South Carolina. You got Georgia versus Florida. You got Oregon versus Michigan. Clemson versus Louisville. Pitt versus SMU. What are your, I would say, quote unquote, games of the week, and what kind of makes it fit the bill for you?
So the two games that I have on my radar, obviously the big one, Ohio State and Penn State, two top 5 teams. That's without a shadow. There's no doubt that's the game of the week. I did find it fascinating that they're playing that game at noon, which the Big Ten likes to do.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's not a 7:30 or 8 o'clock game, which, by the way, Happy Valley would be nuts at 8 o'clock.
I'm glad it's not a night game.
What's interesting to me about that game is, you have embattled coach Ryan Day, who's 1-7 against top 5 teams. And then you have James Franklin, who's 1-9 against the Buckeyes and has lost 7 in a row and hasn't beaten them since 2016. The Buckeyes are missing 2 starters on the offensive line. The Nittany Lions are all banged up. Their quarterback's hobbling around with a knee injury. Their running back, Singleton, who's got breakaway speed, he missed a game not too long ago and is still banged up. They're missing a defensive starter as well on the D-line. Both these teams are really banged up. So I'm interested to see which of these trends will stop on Saturday afternoon in Happy Valley. A little prediction later on in the show, but I'll just set it up like that. The other game, so that I don't get too much grief here in the great state of South Carolina, let's talk about the Gamecocks with a huge opportunity at Williams-Brice in primetime Saturday night against A&M. I'd like to thank personally A&M for finishing my parlay last week and making me a lot of money. Thank you for all of that. Thank you, Mike Alco, for benching Wegman and playing Marcel Reed, who should be the quarterback anyway. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Just in case I can make some coaching decisions in College Station. But Carolina, Beamer's been really good at home as an home underdog. They played really well most of the year. They struggled the first game against Old Dominion when Sellers was his first start, played a little with the jitters, nervous, that kind of thing. And obviously the awful performance at home against Ole Miss where they got railroaded. But outside of that, Carolina's played really well throughout the year. They blew out Kentucky. They blew out Oklahoma. That game was done at the half. They had Alabama on the ropes and should have won that game. They played really good football. And look, A&M only has one loss the first week against Notre Dame at home. I will hold off on both picks because you'll hear them later. Okay. But I will say those are the two games that have my attention. These are the kind of games that Carolina Williams-Brice with Sandstorm and that crowd. It's going to be a madhouse there. And so I'm excited for the Gamecock Nation to be able to get a pretty big game at home. And you know what? Let's be honest. Carolina's been sneaky good this year. So we'll see how they play. Anyway, those are the two I have. What do you think about those? And are there any other games that are on your radar?
Both games are on my radar. And to just make it short, I'm going to tell you my picks. I have Penn State upsetting OSU. I believe the trend that will hold serve is Ryan Day doesn't get it done against quality teams. Or I won't say quality teams, against top 5 teams. A&M versus South Carolina. I believe that South Carolina will do what they normally do. They get you all hyped up and hopeful. And then as soon as you start to think about tiptoeing onto the bandwagon, they let you down, and they let you down tremendously. That's what I believe is going to happen in those two games. Now, if I was wrong in both of them, I would still be elated. I would be very happy if I'm wrong in both of those games, just so we're on the same page. As far as the other game that I'm looking forward to, or I believe will be, I believe will have a very significant outcome, is going to be the Oregon versus Michigan game, because Oregon winning would kind of be apropos. But Michigan taking another L may put them in a position that they won't be able to recover from. That is a team that I don't believe that the Buckeyes will lose to this year. If they did lose to Michigan this year, Ryan Day is absolutely gone. He has to be. But if Michigan loses to Oregon this week, and I don't believe that they beat the Buckeyes this year, that's going to put them in a situation where they're going to be in like the O'Reilly's Bowl or something like that. They aren't going to be in any bowl worth mentioning, the Little Caesars Bowl or something like that, whatever it may be. The other games I'm not really pressed for. I am interested to see if SMU can take Pitt. I think SMU has a sneaky chance of actually taking the ACC. I know Clemson is a quote-unquote blue blood of the ACC, but I really feel like SMU might come in and kind of take their candy, if you will. So that's where I am as far as the picks are concerned, or the two games this weekend that I'm kind of looking at with the, I guess, biggest anticipation.
Yeah, just kind of run through the picks for the rest of the games real quick. I like Georgia beating Florida. There's just a huge talent disparity there. Give me the Dogs. I like Oregon to win in the big house. Michigan's quarterback situation is a mess. Tuttle retired. Warren's back. None of them are any good. And the Ducks, since beating the Bucks, have been really, really lethal. They've been on a mission. I like the Ducks to go on the road and take care of Michigan. I like Clemson. Look, I take no joy in saying this, but after the absolute second half beatdown that the Dogs gave them in the opening week, Clemson has just boat raced everybody, and Klubnik has looked a lot better. Now, granted, the competition has been garbage, so I have to, say that, but that team has been really good. I like Clemson at home coming off a bye to beat Louisville. Louisville's defense has been garbage. And
Yeah.
then the game, if you outside of the two we originally talked about, SMU, as I like to call them, the ponies at home against Pitt. I know Pitt's undefeated, but they've been relying so much on defensive scores. 3 pick sixes against Syracuse on Thursday night in their last game. SMU at home, this is their biggest game in quite some time. Give me SMU at home. And by the way, both teams are really, really high up in the ACC standings. The winner has a great shot to go to the Charlotte for the ACC title game. This is a big game. SMU at home.
I love it. I love it. That does it for the good word of the week. Let's go ahead and move into our truth and nothing but the truth. What we got up first, BK?
So, can or will either the Jets or Bengals still make the playoffs? And I'm going to change it to will they, because of course, I guess, can they? Yes, if they run the table. But
until they're mathematically out, sure they can. Will they? I don't think either one will. And I'll throw another team out there that I don't think will either. And they're in the same boat as the Jets and the Bengals. That's the Dallas Cowboys. I don't foresee either of those three teams making the playoffs. They just aren't playing the best brand of football that they can play. And with the Jets, we'll see how the game goes this evening, but they just seem to kind of shoot themselves in the foot. And the same way that you have the Hail Mary for Washington last week, that kind of gives you that we can run through a wall and team of destiny type feel. The Jets have a feel of if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Hence, they should be up right now by a touchdown. But the player that had a clear touchdown available to them decided they would pull a Deshaun Jackson and drop the ball at the one while celebrating the touchdown that had not been scored yet. So it just feels like if it can go wrong, it will go wrong for the Jets. With the Bengals, they got off to a very slow start, and I believe that their off-season lack of continuity and getting contracts taken care of is what's going to keep them out of the playoffs. With Dallas, for me, it's just the chickens coming home to roost. Jerry Jones has not been a very good GM for years, and they're going to just get a little bit more of what we have seen in the past. Well, we've seen in the recent past that they at least make it to the playoffs and then get shellacked in the playoffs. But it's when you have Michael Parsons hurt, Lawrence is hurt, you only have one wide receiver that ever gets any love. It's just not going to work out. You have no running game to speak of. Washington is in pole position. Philly has looked great since their couple of losses towards the beginning of the season. I just feel like all three of these teams are in a position to whereas unless something significantly different happens for the team, I don't see anything going their way as far as playoffs is concerned.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. I think you said a lot there. The Jets, I've consistently been down on them. They're 2-6. They're probably going to lose tonight, and they'll be 2-7. But whether they win or not tonight is irrelevant in terms of the prediction. They're still not going to make the playoffs. The schedule is going to get them. Looking at their schedule, they still got to play at Arizona, home to Indy, who's better now with Flacco. Seattle's a team that's won 9 games. Miami has Tua back. Will they start to play better? It's at Miami. Who knows? They still got to play the Rams, who are a physical team. They got to go at Buffalo. At this point, the Jets will have to go 8-1 to close the stretch. And this team, they're not going to win 8 games the whole year, let alone 8-1 to close the stretch. So no. And the Bengals, the slow start, they're not going to recover from. Looking at their schedule, they still have games at Baltimore, at the Chargers, home to Pitt, at Dallas, home to Cleveland, home to Denver, at Pittsburgh. Does that really sound like a schedule you're going to go 7-2 or 8-1 against? I don't think so.
Nope. All right. This one may hurt a little bit, but it's the gospel, so we got to talk about it. Should the Yankees fire Aaron Boone? I'll be very. I'm hurting from this right now, so I'm just gonna speak my piece really quickly and let you deep dive into it. But 2 things can be true. I don't think you can fire a guy that just got you to the big show, but it doesn't mean that you should. So that's my thought in a very succinct statement. I'll go ahead and relinquish the rest of my time on this topic to you, sir. What do you have?
I'm good at being wordy, as you know, buddy. So this will be the time that you can go get a snack. So, all right, look. Will they fire him? Absolutely not. He's averaged 90. If you throw out the COVID year in 2020, where they only played 60 games, in 6 full seasons there, he's averaged 95 wins in the regular season with 3 first-place finishes and 3 second-place finishes, and he made the playoffs in 5 of those 6 years. So he's been great in the regular season. He just won the pennant. He just went to the World Series. It's going to be hard to fire a coach or manager that had that kind of season. If BK and I, meaning me, if I had the choice, he would have already been fired. And here's why. Zay, for a living, we're leaders, right? We're leaders. Our teams, and in this case, the Yankees, are a reflection of their manager. They play terrible defense. Their base running is even worse. And Aaron Boone in the playoffs manages every game like it's the regular season. You have to manage playoff games like every game is game 7. You have to win that game. You figure out the next game, but the only game that matters is the game you're playing. He single-handedly twice tried to screw us out of beating Cleveland, and only because Cleveland's bullpen got tired and fell apart were the Yankees able to survive that. Then he single-handedly pissed away game 1. Help me understand how Nestor Cortez hasn't pitched in a month, and you bring him in a high-leverage spot in that situation when you have, oh God, what is his name? The other lefty, I'm drawing a blank, but that sidearm lefty who's really tough, and I apologize, I'm drawing a blank, who's been pitching for you and getting guys out and who has an ERA under 2 against lefties. What are we doing? That's not the time and place to put in Cortez. And look, I like Cortez, and he has a lot of value, but that's not the spot. And then last night, and make no mistake, the Yankees lost last night because Aaron Judge olayed an easy fly ball to center field that anybody in America would have caught. And then Garrett Cole, who's still the, if not the best, the second best pitcher in the American League behind Skubal, got caught sleeping and didn't cover first base on a play that literally they run 7,000 times a year. And had he made that play, it was either 5-0 or 5-1 after 5 innings, and that game's done. It changes who the Dodgers pitch to close the game. They start using their worst relievers instead of their high leverage guys. As soon as that game, and then of course, once it got to late games, 6-5, of course, what do the Yankees do? They bring in Tommy Kahnle, who, by the way, is I like him a lot. He's a solid pitcher. It's 6-5 with 2 innings to go. You bring in Luke Weaver, your star closer, to get 6 outs and call it a day. You don't screw around with somebody else. You got to win. And think about this. If they don't blow game 1, which they outplayed the Dodgers in game 1, and they don't blow last night's game, which they outplayed the Dodgers again, then they're up 3-2 going back to LA, only having to win 1 out of 2. Now, look, LA is really good. So that doesn't mean they're going to win the series. I'm not going to say that. But they should have been up 3-2 heading to LA. Do you know that Aaron Boone was 14-17 as manager in the playoffs before this year? After this playoffs, he's still 22-23. And the Yankees are like the Celtics and the Lakers. If you don't win the title, your season's a failure. Has he won a title? And he's won 1 pennant. In 7 seasons, 0 titles, 1 pennant. Get out of here. Goodbye.
So what you're saying is you feel the way about Aaron Boone that I feel about Ryan Day.
Yes. But in fairness, I would fire Ryan Day too.
Oh, yeah, I would too. That's why I said you feel the way about him that I feel about Ryan Day.
Yeah. And I mean, Lord only help Ryan Day on his if they lose this game to Penn State and they have 2 losses in the Big Ten, they're not making the Big Ten title game.
Nope.
And if they don't do that, yeah, they'll make probably one of the 12 playoff spots, because at this point they'd have a loss to number 1 and 2 if Penn State wins. So it's not like they have bad losses, and they're not going to get blown out. If they lose, it's going to be a close game, like 10 points or less. They're not going to get run out of the stadium. So, but they'll have losses to 1 and 2. Ryan Day, he's going to have a problem. He already has a problem. It's only going to get worse.
That part. 7 WNBA coaches have been fired already. Was this a surprise? Do you see any additional head coach changes? Kurt Miller, Tanisha Wright, Teresa Witherspoon, Latricia Tremmel, Eric Thibault, Christy Sides, and Stephanie White. Some of them had pretty good records, had a pretty good squad. But at the end of the day, superstars matter, especially in basketball. And I'll say, as the WNBA's star burns brighter and the team members, the superstar team members get a little bit more clout, you're going to see more of this. The same as, and I'll give you a little bit of a heads up, what you're going to hear from me in my rant today, where franchises allow players to be GMs. That's not their job and it's not their place. And in several of these situations, it feels like it was more of a player indicating that they don't particularly like the person, even if the person brought about a record that could be respected and had play on the court, that although there are situations that it could have been better, it definitely wasn't as bad as it could have been. So that's kind of where I am as far as that situation is concerned. Would you agree, or do you see it at a different lens?
No, I agree, and I'll add to it. Right, of the 7 firings, the only one that really surprised me was Stephanie White of the Sun. You go 28-12. It's really hard. I'm really hard pressed to figure out how you fire someone that goes 28-12. Um, that was head scratching to me. The other 6, none of those teams were really good. Yes, maybe they made the playoffs, but none of them were any threat to do anything in the playoffs. So I wasn't really too surprised. But the cause of that, I think, are 4 things. And I'm curious how you feel about it. One, with bigger budgets now in the WNBA because of the all-time popularity boom, that means bigger changes. I think the second thing is, in some cases here, GMs are looking for specific head coaches that are better aligned with what their vision is. Maybe they inherited the coach and maybe their visions don't match up, so they needed to make some changes there. Also, I think the WNBA is in a period of transition. Remember, for many years, nobody paid attention or watched this league at all. At all. And all of a sudden, the popularity has just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So you're getting all this popularity, you're getting more eyes, you're getting more money, you're getting more revenue, you're getting all these things, more ratings. It's in transition. And last but not least, what you said, the power of star players. Specifically, I'm going to target here Christy Sides of the Fever. Now, in
Yep.
fairness to Caitlin Clark, Sides has not had any success as head coach of the Fever. The talent that's been now in there with Boston and Caitlin Clark, the talent has gotten better, and therefore the team has gotten better. I don't think the head coach had anything to do with the team getting better. It was Boston and specifically Caitlin Clark that made the team better. And
Yeah.
when you have a coach who has struggled, and there were rumors early in the year when they got off to a slow start, she was going to get fired. And then you have a situation where the coach is publicly kind of taking, I'm not going to say direct shots, but subtle shots to Caitlin Clark, and she's your franchise. Yeah, people don't forget that. So I have no doubt that they're not on the same page, and it made it easy when you have a coach who struggled. It'd be easy to replace her and get better.
And then I also throw in there that with the increasing popularity and increasing budget, that also brings about certain people that may not have thought of coaching in the WNBA that are now an option as well, that are genuinely just better than some of the other coaching talent that was out there previously. I'll be interested to see how many of these fired coaches end up being retreads at another destination versus possibly no longer being in the WNBA in general. With that being said, that wraps up our truth and nothing but the truth. And we move on to our top 5 all time. This week, actors. BK, who comes in at number 5 for you, my guy?
Number 5, my mom, friend of the show, of course. She loves this actor, Denzel Washington. Malcolm X, Training Day, Glory, and of course, Zay, you will remember the
Remember the
Titans.
Titans. Yes, sir.
So he comes in as my number 5. Terrific actor. Who you got?
He'll be on my list a little bit later on. My number 5, Tom Hanks. The first Tom Hanks movie that I remember seeing is actually Big.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still watch that movie to this day. I also loved Forrest Gump and Castaway. Those are 2 movies that, and you can't forget The Green Mile. Like he just like I feel like every movie he took after a certain point in his career were all epic movies. It was like either it's going to be an epic movie or an epic fail, and most of them were epic movies. So for my money, Tom Hanks, it didn't get much better, but I do have 4 actors that I feel slightly better based on some of the movies that they had that I like just a little bit more. Where you got a number 4?
Well, I have to steal something you say all the time, Zay. I
Okay.
had him on my honorable mention. I actually had him 6th. He just missed it for all the reasons you said. He's terrific. And what I love about him is no matter what role he plays, he's good in no matter what role it is.
Mm-hmm.
I should say he's great in whatever role he is. And I think
It
that's
would be so different. Like really, the guy that played this is now doing that. Like, what just happened?
and that's something I look for is someone who has that versatility. So yeah, that was my number 4, Al Pacino. The Godfather, Godfather 2, Scarface, Son of a Woman, all those. Pacino is terrific. So
Any given Sunday.
yeah.
Yeah, he'll be on my list. You'll hear his name as well. Number 4 for me, Morgan Freeman.
Yes.
I can't even. Lean on Me is the first movie that comes to mind. There are 1,000. He was in Glory as well. One of the main characters there. He has so many roles. I can't even tell you, which one stands out the most. But I've never seen a movie where Morgan Freeman was a central character and walked away like this was a waste of my time. Like I've never had that experience with Morgan Freeman being in a movie. So he's my number 4. Who do you have at number 3?
Robert De Niro. He, whether you're talking Raging Bull or The Godfather Part 2, like he's just, I just think he's a tremendous actor.
Ronin. What was the one where with him and wow, it's one of my. It's like a comedy. I can't remember the name of it, but basically he was going to a psychiatrist that was trying to like diagnose his rage or whatever. Another actor that was that's really good. The thing I remember from that movie is every time the psychiatrist said something of note, he was like, you. And then what was I can't remember the end of that movie, but I watched it 1,000 times. But yeah, he's on my list. So my number 3, number 2, and number 1 are people that you've already named, just so we're on the same page.
Okay, so who you got for 3 then?
Al Pacino. For all the reasons that you already named, Al Pacino was my number 3. Scarface was one of my favorite movies from eons ago. But he's another guy that didn't really play in very many movies that you don't walk away saying, wow. So, yeah. What you got at number 2?
Number 2, you being a Laker guy, you'll appreciate this. Can't have a top 5 without Jack Nicholson. As good as it gets, The Shining and so many others, he's a legend. Jack Nicholson, number 2.
My number 2 is actually Robert De Niro. So yeah, my number 1 I'll go ahead and put out there because you've already named him. Denzel Washington. He's another guy that, as far as I can go back, I don't care if we're talking about the Book of Eli, if we're talking about the Equalizer, if we're talking about Glory, Training Day, Remember the Titans, Malcolm X, like he just doesn't put out bad movies. And they're always memorable roles. They're roles that are impactful, if you will, in some way, shape, form, or another. So for me, Denzel Washington is my number one favorite actor of all time. Who's your number one?
I love it. I love it. I'm actually going to go old school.
Okay.
Marlon Brando.
Let me guess. Mom.
Yep. But yes, like whether we're talking about, The Godfather, of course, or even something that maybe a lot of folks would not have been tuned into, A Streetcar Named Desire. I may or may not have read the book or the Cliff Notes in high school, as the case may be. Sorry, English teacher in ninth grade. The Cliff Notes were really good. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, Marlon Brando, number one, just an absolute terrific actor. And I wanted to make sure he was recognized for such.
Can't be mad at that. Can't be mad at that at all. All right, BK. It's time to make us some money, my guy. BK's best bet. Oh, and I would just like to throw this out there. I've doubled up on my initial investment this year for the first time this many weeks into the football season. And it's been a brain melt between looking at your best bets and kind of seeing the forest for the trees, if you will, in a couple of situations. I've been able to kind of make a few strides. So I'm kind of understanding this thing a little bit better. What you got for us this week?
I love it. And last week was a huge week. All the NCAA, the college football picks all hit. The NFL, everything but the Ravens teaser, all got us through the finish line. Eagles, Commanders, Bills, all got us through. Chiefs did it, I believe. I don't remember the Chiefs were on the list. But everyone else hit. So it was a banner week. We're going to try to do the same this week. One straight up bet in the NFL, Washington on the road at the G-Men. Give me the Washington and the money line. The Giants always seem to play Washington tough. Road games are dicey. But with Daniels playing and that Washington team brimming with confidence, a chance to go 7-2 on the road, all I need him to do is win. Give me Washington and the money line on the road. Teaser-wise, move the line Bills to even, Bengals -1, Eagles -1, Chiefs, it's down to -2. The Chargers +4 or +5 at Cleveland, depending on, I got it at +4.5 at Cleveland because they were a 1.5 point favorite. I moved it to taking 4.5. I wanted to make the Chargers a straight up play, but with the new look Browns with Jameis back there, it's not the same old sorry Watson show. I think the Browns being at home might be inspired yet again, but even if they win by 3 or 4, we're still good. We'll backdoor that one and take the Chargers. And I like the Ravens over the Broncos. It was an 8.5 point line. I moved it to 2.5. I just have to think that the Denver winning streak ends in Baltimore. I like Lamar to get it done to win by a field goal. A slight lean, we talked about this earlier, not an official play here because I don't trust either team for the reasons we talked about. But give me the Buckeyes -3 at Penn State. I trust the Buckeyes' talent more and quarterback. They have a healthy quarterback and more talent. And they have, I think, the best player on the field in wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith. Give me the Buckeyes -3 on the road and a must win for the Bucs. But not an official play because, again, both these teams are so it's going to be a toss-up for sure. These are official plays, though. In this case, the wrong team's favored. Help me understand how Minnesota is a 3-point road favorite at Illinois. I know they got boat raced by the Ducks. Everyone has gotten boat raced by the Ducks, other than Boise State, and I know the Buckeyes played them tough. But everyone else has gotten boat raced. Illinois beat Michigan, who was ranked. They beat Kansas, who was ranked. They beat another team that was ranked that I'm forgetting. They already have 3 ranked wins. Why would we think Minnesota, who's played nobody, is going to go to at Champaign, Illinois to play a pissed off Illinois team and they're catching 3 points? Give me Illinois at home. Second, I've been riding the Indiana Hoosiers this whole season. They have covered 7 straight games. Make it 8 in a row, -6.5 at Sparty this week. Oh, by the way, their star quarterback coming back in Rourke. Give me Indiana to go 8-0. I like the Hoosiers. And last but not, well, 2 actually more, A&M. Quarterback change last week. They benched Wayman. They brought in Marcel Reed after that big pick down 17-7 they got in the red zone. They cashed that in the next play. It changed the complete look. I would love for South Carolina to win this game. I really would. It would be a huge thing for the fan base here, and I would love for it to happen. But we don't bet with our hearts here on this show. We're betting with our heads. A&M's talent is so much better than South Carolina's. So much better. The fact that they're less than a field goal favorite on the road is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I think Vegas has this wrong. I like A&M -2.5. They're going to win in Columbia. And last but not least, and another line that makes me shake my head, and this makes no sense. Auburn finally won an SEC game last week. Congratulations. Somehow they're a 7.5-point home favorite over Vandy. The same Vandy that beat Alabama at home, almost beat Missouri in double overtime on the road. The same Vandy that beat Kentucky as a double-digit dog. How is how is Auburn going to beat Vandy by 2 scores? Well, they've won 1 conference game the whole year, and that was Kentucky. Give me Vandy +7.5. If you're looking for any teasers, by the way, Indiana -1/2, Clemson -4.5, Arkansas +13, home game over Ole Miss, Vandy +13.5 if you don't like the 7.5. Illinois, again, +9, moving it over some key numbers. Oregon -8.5 at the Big House, and Kansas State -6.5 at Houston. Houston struggles to score. They've scored 17 or less in 7 of their last 8 games. Kansas State averages 30 points a game. I think Kansas State's the right play there, and that concludes this week's best bets. Follow them, fade them. I just want you guys to make money. I hope this helps. If you've been following the show, we've all made a lot of money, and I hope it continues. So there we are.
And now for my favorite part of every week, the can't miss weekly rant. This week, this is a bit of a mild rant because it doesn't involve anything that I have my heart in. It's just something that let's just call it a simple observation. And I'm bringing light to it as far as one particular team is concerned, but we just kind of took note on it as far as the WNBA is concerned. And we see it in just about every sport other than the NFL, and even a couple of instances in the NFL. But Milwaukee is getting exactly what they deserve. They had the right man for the job, but due to allowing star players to be the GM, Doc Rivers is now the head coach. He's somehow riding the coattails of a magical season with the Celtics from many moons ago. And people still can't see the forest for the trees as far as his actual talent as a head coach. Doc Rivers is now 19-23 through his first 42 games. Adrian Griffin, the head coach that was fired, was 30-12 through his first 42 games. At the end of the day, results speak for themselves, and you don't have to necessarily like my methods. You may not even necessarily like the way that I send you the message that I feel is necessary to send you. But when the results are there, the proof is in the pudding, and you liking someone more and winning less is never acceptable, in my humble opinion, in sports. And that's what we have going on here with Milwaukee. That's what I fear will go on with several teams in the WNBA. That sums up my rant for the week.
Yeah, to your point, I never understood why they fired a coach who won the title so soon after that. I understand
Oh yeah,
Budenholzer
they
was,
did it twice. They fired Budenholzer as well. Yeah, you're right.
and that was the guy that I mean, Budenholzer won the title there.
Yeah.
To fire a guy, it made no sense. And you know
So they
what?
did it twice in a row.
Karma. And again, Doc Rivers' coaching motto would be does less with more.
Go ahead and wrap it up for us, BK. What's your rant for the week?
Well, you know, I know y'all will see this on Friday, but this is recorded on Halloween Thursday night, and the BK reign of terror has come to town. I'm afraid I got some bad news. Notice that I'm wearing the cotton candy pink shirt, but I'm not handing out candy. I'm handing out pink slips. I'm coming for a lot of coaches. First, you heard my rant in MLB. Aaron Boone, you're fired. Or in this case, you're not being brought back. You're gone. In the NFL, Dennis Allen, you're 24-46. You're gone. Brian Dable, you're 17-24. Get out of here. You're gone. Mike McCarthy, the guy who does absolutely less with more and can't figure out how to manage a game to save his life. You're gone. Antonio Pierce, I love you as a person. You're a good dude. You're not it. You're gone. Zach Taylor, the Bengals, you're gone. People say, BK, why are you firing Zach Taylor? You know by now I kind of like stats. I'm a numbers person. He's 40-49 as head coach of the Bengals. And if you throw out the 2 years he went 22-11, he's 18-38 the rest of the time in Cincinnati, counting this year. Does that sound like somebody you want to keep around? Oh, but don't worry, guys. The pink slips aren't done. Let's turn to college football. Coach Ryan Day, it gives me a lot of pleasure to say this. You're fired. Mike Norvell of Florida State. Look, I love your undefeated season. We all last year. We know you all got screwed out of the playoffs. You were better than Texas. You were better than Bama. You were even better than Michigan. You got screwed. We all know you got screwed. But guess what? 1-7 ain't cutting it. Live by the portal, die by the portal. He gone. Brett Venables. This is a futuristic firing. This is me reading tea leaves. He was mediocre in year one. Yeah, he had a great year two, 10-2 or 10-3, because they lost the bowl game 10-3. They've sucked this year. Their offense literally is disappeared. And by the way, have you seen the rest of their schedule? And then look at their schedule next year. Yeah, I'm just going to fire him now. Dave Aranda, Baylor, you were already on the hot seat. You're 2-4. You're fired. And last but not least, Hugh Freeze. Congrats on winning your first conference game at Auburn. But this has been an absolute debacle. You thought the prior guy, Brian Harsin, that you got from Boise that you just canned was bad. Somehow, Hugh Freeze has made him look good. He's gone. I'm going to give a pass to Doug Peterson. And here's why. I had him ready to go. Pink slip was in hand. I was walking to the office to deliver the pink slip. But you know what? On our show, we do due diligence. And if you look at the numbers, he was 9-8 each of his last 2 years at Jacksonville. So yes, he's been terrible this year. 2-6 isn't going to cut it. But if you went 18-16 and went 9-8 each of your last 2 years, I have a hard time firing somebody for this being the first half of a bad year. I'm going to give you the rest of this year. You're going to tell me what we're going to see what you do next year. If you start out of the gate slow next year, pink slip's already ready to go. And that's the truth.
I'm 100% with you with everybody other than Doug Peterson. For him to be a quarterback whisperer, his message isn't quite getting to Trevor Lawrence. So that's the only reason.
But is it the coach? Is it the coach or the quarterback?
It better be the coach because you just paid the quarterback, so you better figure out something because the quarterback ain't going nowhere no time soon. So here's the thing. When you paint yourself into the corner of I just paid the quarterback and now my dead cap space is that of 5 starters if I fire him, you can't let him go. So you might want to do something different somewhere. But I can see if they want to keep the crew together and give it, one last ditch effort. But I kind of felt.
I know that we normally don't do this in the rant part, but I want to touch to a bigger issue, right, that you and I talk about. The Dolphins foolishly extended Tua. The Jags unnecessarily and foolishly extended Lawrence. The Cowboys gave a boat ton of money to Dak for a quarterback that never wins anything that counts. I'm confused why we keep even Jalen Hurts. While he had a great run for a short time, he was never really that guy. And I sit there and I watch these quarterbacks cash out these contracts for these teams that are so desperate to have their franchise quarterback. And I just shake my head and say, what are we doing? I don't get it. I wouldn't be doing it.
Completely understand where you're coming from. At the end of the day, decent quarterbacks don't grow on trees. And if I look at the current backups and I look at the success rate of the rookie quarterbacks, if you can have a decent quarterback and then kind of fill the rest of the team in around them, you're better off than going back to the well and hoping that the rookie that you draft is going to be the one guy that actually ends up being worth his salt. There's normally only 1 or 2, and there's several drafted. So while I 100% agree with you that they were overpaid, it's one of those things that the market kind of dictates who gets what next. And you'd rather have somebody than nobody. And it's one of those where at least you know the devil you got versus hoping that the next one that comes down the line can fix the inefficiencies of the last one. But I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I agree with what you're saying.
And to your point, though, Zay, it's like what we talked about in a prior show, right? Like, there's been a huge drop-off in quality of NFL head coaches. And there's been a huge drop-off in quality of NFL quarterbacks. Go back 10 years and look how much better the quarterbacks were than they are now. In a time now where it's the most pro-offensive offense that we've ever seen. It's easier now to put up yards and points than we've ever seen, and the quarterbacks just aren't there. I remember a couple weeks ago I said there's only 8 quarterbacks I would take out of 32.
And BK, let me add to that. They've made the game easier for the quarterback, and they seem to be playing worse. So it's like,
Right.
what
Yeah.
more can you ask the NFL to do? Is
Like, I couldn't fathom having to try to sell my team that we're going to make the playoffs, and I'm running out Trevor Lawrence. Like, nobody's dumb enough to buy that.
only fan.
Apparently the GM of the Jags is. It only takes one.
We're just in a very vicarious situation right now as far as quarterbacks are concerned. And until you start having quarterbacks become a quote-unquote dime a dozen like you do with running backs, their paycheck is going to continue to get better, even though their play may continue to be mediocre for most of them. That's just kind of where we are. And unfortunately, my friend, that's the truth. That wraps up the show for this week. If you didn't catch any of the earlier shows for this week, make sure you go back and try those shows out. Please do us a huge favor. Go follow us on YouTube at The Gospel STP. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, please do us a huge favor and go do that. That, again, is The Gospel Sports Truth Facebook group. And for you that have been loyal listeners for the longest on whatever platform that you listen to, if you haven't officially followed or if you haven't left any comments letting everyone else know how you've been enjoying the show, please go ahead and do us that huge favor. For this week, we out. And remember, tell the truth.
And nothing but the truth. And guys, remember, enjoy the weekend of football. And don't forget to vote. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Check us out. You'll be glad that you did. And like my man said, make sure that you check us out, subscribe, follow, do all those things because, we love doing this and we love to hear what you think. So take care, y'all.
All right, y'all. Be easy.
Later.